This is James. Today I'd like to show you some tactics in the Italian Four Knights with the fort trick. The Italian Four Knights is a popular opening at scholastic level, especially under 1200. The opening starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and it commonly occurs through two move orders. One is a four knights game with knight c3, knight f6, and now bishop c4. And also, it can occur through the Italian game with three bishop c4 after black plays the two knights defense with knight f6. And here the most popular moves are d3, which is the most solid, and then d4, which is an interesting simple approach, and knight g5, which can require some precise knowledge. Today we'll discuss knight c3, which is very common in scholastic chess because it's a natural developing move. The knight defends the pawn, and white's putting his knights on good squares. And this is also a very natural square for the bishop, which joins the center. And many people will play bishop c5, and this is a good solid move. But these positions can have a bit of a boring reputation, maybe a little undeserved, but it can get rather locked up in this symmetrical position. But black has an alternative to exploit this move forward. He doesn't have to go down this path. He has a tactical strike already at move 4 after bishop c4. And this is a reason why this opening has fallen out of favor in master practice. And against the two knights, you'll see d3 a lot these days, and the pawn protects the pawn first. Maybe later, white may develop the knight. So usually, masters prefer to put the pawn on c3 to control d4. But if you want to play this way with the knight here, I recommend doing this first if you're playing with the white pieces. Today we'll see some tactics, so the way that black can fight for the initiative early in the game. And there are a lot of instructive tactics that occur throughout the open games that you can learn from studying the fort trick variation. Okay, so black takes on e4, and if you haven't seen this before, it may look quite surprising because it looks like black is just giving up a piece at first. But there's a clear tactical idea. If white takes, black has a pawn fork with d5, and here you see the fork. Okay, where the bishop and knight are attacked. So black will get his piece back. So this is by no means a sacrifice. It's a tactical maneuver to gain a positional advantage. Notice that once white takes either piece, they'll have an extra pawn in the center. And this variation gives him good central control. So that's the idea of the variation. And I'm going to go into more detail about this. But first, before I get to that, in this video, I'd like to address some tricky options that white may have after black plays knight takes e4. So, if white is aware of this fork idea with d5, he may decide not to take the knight and play something tricky. But don't worry, if you know what you're doing, you have a very good chance to play for an advantage in nearly all lines if he doesn't take the knight. So taking the knight is by far the best move. But we do need to know how to handle it. If our opponent's trying to trick us, we want to be ready for him. Okay. So there are two moves that white might try other than taking the knight. Okay. One is bishop takes f7, kind of a desperado sacrifice where white sees he's going to lose a piece, so thinks why not draw out the king. This is a tricky line, but it's a bit dubious, and black can play for an advantage if he knows how to handle it. Another move I'd like to mention is castles. I think this is maybe the most dangerous deviation. I think it's better than bishop takes f7, but if black knows how to defend, I think he can play for an advantage here as well. In this video, I'm going to show you a safe way to handle this, and maybe in another video I'll show you a more ambitious approach. The ambitious approach for black here to try to hold on the pawn is to take the knight, and after d takes c3, this is the idea, just to develop rather quickly, but notice that black has two central pawns. So although white has this big leading development, if black can weather the storm, he can come out with a better game. But actually he has to play very precisely here. This is a very dangerous line. It's called the Boden-Kieseritzky Gambit. So it's just kind of a warning that I would only go into this if you really know what to do. And the main move for black to hold on the pawn is with f6. But it's rather tricky because you have to make a lot of pawn moves and cover yourself, and so it's not the most intuitive defense. So if you were to counter this, I'm going to give you a simple option. It gives the pawn back, and this is especially good for faster time controls, where having a simple choice sometimes good to know, so you don't have to spend as much time calculating and still get a good position. So if you want to play it safe and you don't know that line very well, I would recommend getting the pawn back and just continue with your kingside development and get castled fast. There are two ways of doing this. One is with knight d6, attacking the bishop. And then once the bishop moves, you can continue with bishop e7. That prepares you to castle. And if he plays rook e1, attacking the pawn, you can castle here, but the main move is to push the pawn. Okay, and then you're going to give back the pawn on e4, so after he takes, and we have the exchange. Black can play d5, chasing the rook back, and then black can either castle or play bishop g4. And I've seen a number of strong players handle this. One name that comes to mind is Grandmaster Stevich. But there's also another approach that I think I may even like better. That's another safe way to play. It depends on where you want your knight to be. In this case, the knight is on the queen side. So let's go back to the Boden-Kieseritzky after castles. Okay, so white is just castled here. We're gonna, let's see, we're gonna go, instead of, there's a pawn here, okay, and instead of retrieve knight d6, another approach that I think is quite good is knight to f6. And although it doesn't attack the bishop, the knight is on a good defensive square and controlling the center. And here, what I can do is he can play rook e1 to get the pawn back. And I would advise you as black just to continue developing and let go of the pawn and let white take it. And after black takes back, we can chase the rook back first with d6. And I think the most common move for white is rook e1, although white can also play rook to g5 to try to play more aggressively on the king side, though I think this move has some drawbacks. There's a variation I want to mention with this line, however, after rook e1, that's kind of interesting. So after rook e1, once you chase the rook back, you play d5. And again, I think the most popular approach for white here is bishop f1, just to keep the safety. And we have this symmetrical structure where I think I can just castle here and just get normal development, and I think this is fully equal. The move that I saw recommended by the engine was bishop b3, but this move has some drawbacks. It's a little tricky, and I'll mention this. Be careful about castling here, because white has a little trick here to get a pawn. You can take on d5, after takes, you can take on e7, so the bishop's undefended. You have a little trick here yourself with bishop h3, with the idea that if he takes the bishop, you get here with check, and you win the rook to get the exchange. But white has a calm defense here. If he finds it and just plays king f1, then I think white has a slight advantage with the extra pawn. So just wanted to warn you about that. So let's go back to key position. Okay, maybe. Boden-Kieseritzky. So we have the safe option with knight f6, after rook e1, bishop e7, knight takes, rook takes, d6. Okay, and so an improvement for black here is if the rook goes back, and after we chase the bishop, if he retreats here, I would advise you not to castle, but take care of d5, and then you're fine. I think a good solid move here is c6. And this is just a useful move to have. And then you're free to play your queen side bishop where you like. And one thing I like is that I think the bishop is quite limited here. It's going to be hard for him to get into the game. So I like black's long-term chances in this kind of game. It's a little bit like things you see in an innocuous exchange French, where black may be able to slowly outplay white, even though it's objectively equal. And also you can play bishop e6. That's another great move in castle. So you're quite safe if you do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if he does rook g5, this is a little tricky, but this can backfire because the rook can get chased around a lot. So he's kind of going into a danger zone. I've seen a few people play g6, but I think it may just be best to castle. I think that's the most principled. And then say after d4, okay, continue development, getting the bishop into play. You can play, this bishop is on c4. Excuse me. Yeah, forgot about that. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So this was the position after the exchange. Okay, we chased the rook, rook g5, and castles. Okay, Just want to make sure I got that right. Okay, yeah, so that's the right position. And now d4. Okay. I want to mention this because in this line, the bishop can come to this diagonal. So in the previous example the rook was treated, black could have posed a question to d5. So this is a tricky line to know because in some sense, white has higher ambitions with this line because he is keeping control of d5, and that's an important point. And the bishop can go to the diagonal, so it can be dangerous, just to let you know. But if you defend precisely, I think you can even play for an advantage. So, so here, c6, preparing d5 is a good move, and then after rook g3 to open the path of the bishop to prepare something like bishop h6. A point I want to show here is that white is not able to easily restrain black's center, like with a space advantage, because this rook is not in a stable position at the moment. If we try something like d5, it just doesn't work out well because of knight d5. They have discovery of the rook. So he really needs to go back with this rook. But you can continue with d5 and you can claim the center, and you can prepare counterattack because this rook can start to be chased around. So if white's going to try something, he might go for a fast attack like bishop h6, and knight e8 is a good defensive move to cover g7. This is something that I've seen in Najdorf. If you've ever studied the bishop doesn't attack, it's a common defensive thing. But black is a very solid structure. The only problem is his knight is not defending h7 in a number of cases. So it can get a little dangerous if you're not careful. As we'll see, bishop d3, natural. Okay, attacking this diagonal, and you have a really good move here that will give you the advantage if you play it right. But you gotta get it right. Okay, so the move here to kind of break white's coordination is bishop h4, and but the big thing you have to deal with is how to handle queen to h6, okay, because this can be quite dangerous. And you can take the rook. And you're ready to play g6 next move. A lot of cases, like if he just takes it, you can play g6. Let's see, one thing that white may try here is bishop g5, like to attack the queen while simultaneously threatening mate. And here you have this defensive resource g6, and you can allow this trade. And while white is taking the bishop, you can free a rook, and you're up in exchange. For instance, after here, you can just play f6, and then you freed your rook, and you're just up in exchange with a clear advantage. Okay. Another thing. Okay, so after, so, right. So after bishop h4, queen to h5, bishop takes rook, you can take it, but the move you really got to be prepared for is bishop to h7. And if you don't find the defense, you may just think you're completely lost. But actually, you're better if you find it. Okay. So the first thing to get out of the way is this bishop is taboo. If you take it, then bishop g5 wins the queen. Okay. So, but you can just move the king. Okay. So keep in mind that as scary as this attack looks, you do have an extra rook at the moment, and he has hanging pieces. So he has hanging bishop. So, although it's like tactically defended. Now, let's see. So he needs to do something. One idea, okay, is okay, after he's moved the king, he can move the bishop to g5, and not only is he threatening the queen, but he's freeing the connection between the bishop and the queen and preparing a mate threat. Okay, so you got to defend against this. Knight f6 is the next move you need to find, and right here he can take you, and this is a good tactics problem, I think. How would you continue as black? And you have to find only moves. And in situations like this, you want to look for all forcing moves. The good thing for you is that the situation is so forcing that once you find the right idea, it kind of pops out. But it is hard to find. The first one I don't think is so difficult. Okay. So I recommend that you pause the video for a moment. This is a good training exercise, and then we can discuss the solution afterwards. Okay, so now I'll explain. If the queen takes the bishop, that's a blunder, because the bishop can cut off the defense of the queen, and then we have checkmate. So we can't do that. So we need a forcing move to save, because that is such a strong threat with these two bishops around. We can't. So one of the most forcing moves in chess is the check. Okay. So white has to respond. Okay. And if he takes with the king, now you can bring the queen in defense with check. And this is a very important detail. And if the king moves, well, now you can interpose and save yourself, and you'll be up a rook. Okay. That's one part, one variation. But to accurately calculate, to get full credit for this exercise, you need to find what happens if he doesn't take, because he's not forced to take. Let's say he moves the king to h1. Okay, now how does he get out? You don't have queen f6 with check anymore, and bishop g6 is coming. Again, only move here. You only have one move. Okay, if you find it, you have a clear advantage. Okay, so what you need to do here, since the queen check is the big problem, you got to do something about the queen. Okay, and here we have a nice deflection. Bishop to g4. And it's very beautiful how this works together with the bishop check, because the bishop is covering like the escape squares. Okay, like the queen can't go to h4 now. And so you get out of this, I mean, you can take the queen, but now you'll just take the queen, and you're going to be up material if you check it. So remember, we're up for what you can have, and why we'll have two hanging bishops in that sequence. So okay, and so the thing to look at is, okay, let's say he takes. Okay. Let's see. Okay, then well, I think you can just take the bishop. Okay, but his bishop is hanging. Okay, so that gives us enough time to defend. So since this bishop is going to be lost, probably the most resistance is the desperado. Okay, bishop takes g7, king takes, queen takes, king takes bishop, and then there's the fork. This is a complicated line, but to get this point, we just need to find a few moves to survive. But only moves. Okay. Queen g4. Okay, you can check here. Of course, you can take. If he takes, you can play your queen to f6, and you're defending, and you're up in exchange. And if your king is safe now, you're clearly better. And if okay, he can throw in a few checks, but he doesn't have a draw. You can just pick your king up to h6. Okay, and now I can fork again, and king g6 is a nice move. If he goes to g4, you're ready to come with queen to g5 defending, and then if he takes the bishop, you've still got queen f6, and that's a nice move to have because it neutralizes all the counterplay. And the checks come out, and then you got the heavy pieces going. The extra pawn that it has is not going to come out nearly as much as the extra exchange. So, so I thought this was kind of a neat tactical point in this variation. Although I showed this as a simple solution, I thought this was a nice example of middle game tactics that could develop in this variation that I came across in analysis. So that's my coverage of the Boden-Kieseritzky. If you want to play simply to equalize, and here again, if white's too ambitious, and that's often the case with people that go for gambits like this, is when their attack starts to peter attack. When their attack starts to peter out, they sometimes get desperate. And if you can weather the storm, you can come out ahead. So good chess is as much defense as offense. And that's what I wanted to show in this lesson, is the fine balance between attack, defense, and counterattack. So as we'll see in a number of examples, black will defend with a few accurate moves and then stage a counterattack. Okay, so we're seeing active defense, and that's what I like. Okay, so let's go through the opening moves to review. So we have the Italian four knights disposition, and we have the key tactic, the fork trick. Okay, instead of taking or castles, which we saw, and we're examining the knight f6 move, white could also play bishop takes f7. And of course, black should take, white takes back. And I think this approach is, you see sometimes at the lower levels, because it's very tempting to want to attack the king with a number of checks. It's about to check on g5, and it may look almost like white's about to mate if you're inexperienced, but black has a good defense here. And the best approach is don't be afraid of the check on g5, and just take the center with d5, chasing the knight. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to lure white in and then counterattack. We're going to see a lot of good counterattacks in this variation. So I think the two moves you're probably most likely to see are the two checks. But if black defends correctly, he comes out on top. And really, any knight retreat, he comes out on top of this variation. It's once you know what to do, you have the future. You have the center, and you have the bishop pair. And those are some strong positional advantages. The key thing is you want to play accurately and actively. Okay, so here, let's look at knight f g5 first, because this is maybe white's most direct attempt, okay, to go for a checkmate. So we should just go back in the corner. And our king is fairly safe. Remember, this isn't bug house. If white could drop a piece here, he'd be winning, but he's only attacking with two pieces at the moment, and they're a bit unstable. Okay. So white's idea often, not his only idea here, is to threaten mate. Okay, and queen f3. Let's look at queen f3 first. There are two ways to threaten checkmate. Queen f3 and queen h5. So after queen f3, think for a moment how you would defend, because the way you defend at this point kind of sets the stage for how you're going to counterattack, and it's important to get this move right. Now keep in mind that the most natural defense with queen f6 that you normally like to make isn't possible because the knight is guarding f6. But you have some good options. So pause the video for a moment and think how you defend. Okay, so right here, I think the move I like best is queen to d7. And here, you defend f7, of course. And although you're blocking the bishop, what I like about it is that you keep holding d5, and this helps prepare your counterattack to push white back. And this is very good. Okay. Once you found this move. If it goes something like knight c3, trying to attack on d5, I think that's like one of white's main hopes is, if black defends against the immediate mate threat, of course, to try to get something on this diagonal. But this is where the queen helps in holding this, because to make this attack work, he needs a knight here, and you can just chase him back with h6. And you don't have to worry about either capture on d5. It just does not amount to much. If he takes here, you can take the knight. This is good. Another move to look for, which may even be like slightly stronger, is knight d4, threatening the fork as well. But they're both winning. Okay, because you're gonna get a piece in some form with a material advantage. Okay, with the queen's off the board, king 60 is not an issue as much. If anything, white's kings coming to attack. So other than, okay, if he takes here, again, this doesn't really lead to anything. I mean, if you try to attack on this diagonal, you can move your king. You can keep checking, but you can block easily, and you have a fine game. It's not such a big deal if he gets this pawn because you're likely to get counterattack on c2, and he's not very well developed actually. And again, you're up a piece, so that's nothing to be afraid of. Very safe. Okay. And lastly, if he tries to save his piece with knight h3, and this is a common story of failed attacks that you see in scholastic chess, where like tried to attack with his queen to threaten checkmate, but it didn't go anywhere, and then he has to move back. Now is a good time to look for this move. You see this a lot, like when the queen is out, especially on f3. Knight d4. Again, active defense. There's no need to like try to defend this pawn. I mean, you can play here, and I think that's good. But this is even more forcing because you get this fork here. And again, you don't have to worry about taking here because c2 is going to follow check. So this is a large advantage. If the queen goes back to d1, okay, if he makes a normal move like that, to continue our development and continue with the larger advantage, we just play queen f7. And this is a maneuver you can keep in mind with this when the queen on d7, even though it's blocking the bishop, once you repulse the attack, it can step aside and free the bishop. And this is just a great position. Okay, so let's go back. So we have the time for knights, fork check, check, and then we boldly push the knight, and we welcome to come into g5. Okay, so let's look at knight f5 here. Now another check, another mate threat, queen h5. It's a little different because white is trying to provoke a weakness with g6, and then maybe come back and argue that this has been weakened now, and this changes a few things. So this is a tricky option. One thing I want to point out is that the same defense with queen d7 works fine as well. And that goes back here now. One move you can do, I think a strong move here is queen to f5, and you're already threatening h6 to win a piece, okay, using the pin on the knight, and having to make a move like g4 just wouldn't be very nice for him. So this is very good. And if he goes this way to control f5, well, you can push him back. Okay, this is consistent with the theme, like defending our weaknesses and pushing our opponent back. So you could play here, and then when he goes to f3, you can just cover the center very calmly. You can try to make these one-move attacks, like knight h4. Okay, preparing to go to g6 perhaps, but we can just calmly defend king h7. But just remember, always check your opponent's threats, like what he's doing. White could go back here, and maybe this might look funny, but he's threatening to win your queen. because now the pawn is pinned at the king on h7. So this is a threat. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, like if you tried d3, you could push him back to g6. And you'd have a great game. But if he goes back here, a calm way of handling this is queen to g4, and just force the trade of queens. And you're poised for an excellent endgame. Because your pieces are much active, and you own the center, and you also have the bishop there, so this is a large event. There's even more ambitious way to proceed in this line that I'll just show you for a moment. So, okay. So after queen h5, threatening mate. Okay, besides queen d7, which is a very safe way of handling things, you can go g6 here, in fact. Although it appears to be a weakening move, chases the queen back with tempo. Now he goes to f3. So we have the same position we looked at before, but with g6 inserted now. And this changes some things. So think about this as another problem. How would you defend here now? So I recommend to pause this video if you haven't seen it before. Then we'll discuss it. Okay. Okay, so here, you may have been tempted to make a queen move, but this, the queen moves here are not so strong. One thing to definitely avoid is queen d7. Queen d7 is horrible now because f6 is not protected, and this just wins the queen. Queen e7 is playable, but you get in a little bit of tactical issues with queen b3 that I would rather avoid. Okay, you don't get as large of an advantage here. And you have to play precisely too. So you're giving a bit away when you do this. And it's nice to have this pawn protected a lot of times, okay, when you're defending. In this case, we need to look for a way that g6 benefits us. And it turns out, in fact, that bishop f5 is just a winning move. That's very strong. And white has nothing here. Now, one thing that might have, if you consider this move, you may have been a little discouraged by g4. Okay, because what you're doing is you're essentially putting this piece in a pin. There are different types of pins, and this is a pin to a square. So if this bishop moves, like if you take the knight, that would be a blunder because of checkmate. So we've got to be careful here. But the move that makes this all possible is exploits the vulnerable position of the queen. So remember this, that there's often a tempo hidden in the position. We have knight d4. And this is completely winning now. Because if he comes back to defend, well, we can simply take the knight. Because it's no longer pinned, and we have an extra piece with a completely winning position. So, and another thing, if white plays something like d3, there are a couple of ways you could proceed here. It turns out, in fact, you can just take here as well, because after pawn takes, trying to exploit the pin, well, guess what move we have now? The same move, knight d4. This saves us. So we keep our piece. Okay, that's a simple way of handling things. Another thing you can do is just play h6. And this may be objectively strongest. This is very calm defense. Okay, so both these knights are kind of in trouble, and it's not a really good solution. Okay, so these were some tricky options. Okay, let's go back. Okay, to position. Okay. Right. So the Italian four knights, fortune, takes, d5. Now let's examine the less crazy attempt. Knight fg5. Again, we retreat, and here, white could continue developing with e3 to cover e4. We can just push him back with h6. And here, this is really the only square left. And we have a great game. We can take here and play bishop d6 and we have a very large advantage. This is a great way to play. Another point I like to make is it's very tempting in situations like this with a nice sideline like this is it can sometimes be useful to hold off and use the absence of light square bishop and keep the pin here. And I think this is also very strong as well. This pin can be annoying because white has ways to put pressure, and in some ways this pawn's overloaded. So a situation like this, you'd be threatening to win the knight. Like takes. Yeah. And if he tries to cover this square with c3, there's more than one good way to proceed. You just want to finish your development and keep the initiative going. Queen d7 is a good way to put pressure on the knight. It's just about forces the knight back, and that's pretty awkward. Okay, and black you can just continue developing with bishop d7 and trying to post for your rook. Okay, like you could come along the f file, or it might be quite useful in the e file. Another thing you could do is you could also play queen f6. This is also very strong, and that way you're preparing to get the rook to d8 in this case and support the center. So these are two very good options to really put pressure on white. He's in a very unpleasant position. Okay. You have the center of the bishop pair and a nasty pair. So this is a very tempting option. That is very strong as well. Okay, so d3 really doesn't accomplish a whole lot. White just gets pushed back and you take the center. And this pin can be very unpleasant, as well as take down h3. I think a more challenging approach is to play d4 to fight for the center. And this has a little bit of a trap that you want to watch out for. Here, it might be very tempting to play e4, but this is not the strongest move. I can play knight e5, and here, after the trade, a tempting move for black might be h6 to push the knight back. And sure, this would be great if the knight had to move back here, but there's another option. And here again, you might want to think for a moment and pause the video to be sure you see this tactic. White can play knight takes e4, and the pawn is pinned, because if the pawn takes, the queen will be lost. Remember that the queen has walked away from the queen, so it's unprotected. So this is a little trap that you want to avoid, okay? Because white is really better here. You need your center. So let's see. Okay. So let's look for an improvement here. Okay. After d4. Okay. Challenging us in the center. So think about a better way of handling this. So this knight was a problem in this sequence. So one way we can look at this sometimes, if a move order doesn't work in one variation, sometimes it helps to reverse the order and see how it works in another move order. The strongest move is h6, to push the knight back, and he can't go to e4 now. He needs to go back to h3, and now you see this knight is really bad. Okay, it's limited in movement, and if you heard the expression, the knight on the rim is dim. Okay. So now that we've made this knight bad, now we can push. So you can play along similar lines to what we described in the other variation without the drawback. After knight e4, we can take. We can also take the knight on h3 and play bishop c5. In white's pawn structure is a complete wreck. With little return, black has a clear advantage. This is a simple way of playing. There's even a more ambitious way of playing. A resource I've been using for this presentation is Boligand's Black Weapons. And this is a line that Boligand gives that I think is very nice. And these are top engine moves. You can always check these. Like, if you have any questions in your analysis, you reach a stopping point where you get stuck. It can be good to check your analysis with engine, especially on these tactical lines. Instead of, okay, so after d4, instead of e4, we want to push the knight back first. Because once the knight gets to e5, there's stress with f7. So we want to push this before any of that happens. Then once we push the knight, we can push, and that's great. Okay, clear advantage. But even more ambitious, okay, with the bad place of the pieces, is a point I made earlier, that you can go for this pin, and this pin is very unpleasant. First of all, if he takes the pawn, okay, so you're like threatening e4. So if he takes, you can take with the knight, and you have a great position. He's threatening to win a piece because this pawn is never loaded again. Okay, with knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. And if he tries to defend, a good way to improve your position with the king in the center is to bring the rook in the attack, get a heavy piece on the e file. One way of doing this, while keeping your d5 pawn covered, is to bring the queen up to d6. This helps support the knight. So if white tries to break this pin, this is still protected, and I can play h3 and chase the bishop back. It's good just to keep this tension. You don't want to give up that pin with this awkward placement of the knights. And even another move you can play here, because the king is in the center, is rook e8. Because if he takes this bishop, you have a discovered attack. Now, this is likely to transpose because it'll probably block the bishop and then the bishop will retreat. But, so the bishop comes back. Rook e8 is a strong move with tremendous pressure. Couple of points. So with black, okay, you have a number of ideas here. One is like exchanging, pushing the pawn. That's a tactical idea. You have to check it, but in some variations it's possible. One strong threat here is knight c4. This is maybe the most pressing one because you're attacking the pin piece. But another thing too is once this falls, like if this pawn captures, you're also weakening here, and this position is just crumbling. If he plays b3 here now, to prevent this idea, you could even go to the other idea I mentioned, d4. Okay. If he takes with a pawn, even because this bishop's pinned, he can't take his block, so the piece is pinned. And if he takes with the queen, again we have this, and when you look at a tactic like this, be sure to check all your opponent's resources, because there's one move that almost appears to maybe get out of the pin, with castles, but e3 had a drawback. Yeah. The check. Okay, and you get the piece. So this is winning for black. And let's see. Okay. Okay, and another thing. Let's see. Right. And if he tries to break this pin with g4, this is a pretty miserable position. Because after here, okay, he solves the problem of the knights, but he has a big bash in his king side, and you have these great bishops and active pieces. Simplest way to proceed is just retreat the queen, keep this covered, and then you have a really great post for your bishop, and his king will never be safe. Maybe if he castles king side, you might even have options opening the path of the rook with something like rook h5, but it's a very unpleasant position. So not to mention rook takes pawn takes queen g3. Okay, so so that's a disaster for white. Okay. One thing that helps me to remember variations sometimes is just playing through them over a board, and it kind of refreshes my memory of like how the tactics work. If you remember reasons for each move, it'll help you to remember the variations better. What's important is that you own the variations you study, that you have your own reasons for every move you make. So, okay, we got, so yeah, we got to this this variation that I was talking about. So the important thing, we push the knight back, and this pin is really dangerous. And one last thing white could try, but this is a disaster as well, is queen d2 to get out of the pin, but white's structure crumbles, and with the king in the center is just a total disaster. The bishop can take, queen takes. This is a line that Boden can get. Queen d7, chase the knight back, and pawn, open the file for the rook. And then there's a nice move here, just knight e5 on f3. And there's not a whole lot white can do here. If he protects this, he can push c5 to have this huge center. And if he tries to take the pawn, it doesn't work out either. c5. If he tries to counterattack, well, there's the last counter. And lose their attack, and white's knight will fall, and black has a completely winning position. So we handled the checks, and those are the tricky ones, and hopefully I showed you a number of good counterattacking ideas you can use your own games, and how to develop your pieces once you repulse the attack. This can be very fun to play, if you ever get the chance. So, so let's look at some other retreats. Okay. So white can play less aggressively and retreat the knight to two other squares, c3 and g3. Let's cover c3 first. Okay. Here, because there's no check, now we can just push. And now, because there's no support from the knight has to move back. And since the knight's covering the central squares, he has to go back to g1. Not very good for white, to be sure. And here, a good move is bishop to f5. And this has two functions. Okay, you cover the pawn, which prepares to play d4, and at the same time, you're preventing white's development. Because whether white pushes the pawn to d3 or d4, you're ready to take on d3 like your b1 passant. And once the pawn takes back, you got to d4. And this is a terrible position for white. So, let's see. And if he just tries to continue developing with a move like knight ge2, well, then you have these very nice tempo moves, along with the tempo moves you got earlier. I mean, you got d5 chasing the knight, e4 chasing the knight, you have b4 chasing the knight, you push them back, and then you get d3, and every pawn push comes with tempo. And it's sort of funny that white plays this aggressive looking move with bishop f7, and yet is being pushed off the board. So you can move here, but you got a good check. The king just about has the move. One thing you can do is just bring the queen up, and you're ready to bring the knight to d4 with a dominating position. This pawn is kind of crippling. This bishop is locked in, and this is a completely dominating position. I mean, even if white tries to simplify things, like force to trade the queen, it just doesn't go anywhere. This is just dominating. Terrible position for white. So your rook's going to come to e8, and white's getting white off the board. Okay, so knight c3 just isn't good. He just gets pushed off the board. The pawn moves just come swarming in. White is not going to have a good time. So let's see. Okay. Let's look at the other. Wait. Let's see. So let's look at the other retreat. Okay, G3. This is maybe the most solid looking retreat. But again, you have this push, and he has to retreat to G1. Good thing for white is that there's not this tempo move with D4 coming so quickly. So this is going to give white a little bit of time to push his D pawn, develop the bishop, and maybe he can get this other knight D2, you know, and try to consolidate his position, maybe get something playable. But there's a very strong move that Boden recommends that puts a lot of pressure on white that I think is very nice. This move targets the knight on G3, and this is a positional idea that you sometimes see to attack the knight on G3. You can push with the pawn, and it may look a little reckless. If your king is open as is, you don't even have a knight on the king's side. But this pawn, this pawn prepares to chase the knight, gaining more space, and putting white on passive squares, and also weakening his king side. Like there's also the push with H3. It's not far. And another point also is that this pawn, as we'll see in a number of variations, is very good for supporting the bishop on G4. For instance, if white tries to stop H4, this is great. Okay, you see, our king side is quite fine, in fact. In fact, this is a great blockader in a sense, and offers great support. So the question you may be asking after H4, and I think this would probably discourage a lot of people from playing it, is, well, why can't he just take? Okay, because the queen protects the knight. But keep in mind, white has development issues in this variation, and he's losing control of the center. So pawn grabbing at this point is often not a good idea, and that's definitely the case here. Like it's tempo moves again. Queen to H4, attacking the knight. So the knight needs a retreat. Then you get another tempo move. You try to find another good tempo move to keep your development with threats. Bishop G4. Okay, this is really strong. Okay, and I can block here with the knight, and this is a very strong attack. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. I'm sorry. This king was here. Yeah, the king was here the whole time. Sorry about this, but if you remember, sorry, the king was here because it took the bishop. Yeah. So remember that there wasn't a check. Sorry about this. This must have been something I overlooked. But the king was here because there was no check on G5. And so right here, I knew something didn't look right. The rook can come in. Okay. And yeah, I hope the other variation had right. Well, I'll go back and check it. So rook E8 is a good way of continuing the attack. And after, say, G4, maybe hoping he won't take so he can keep the position closed and finish his development. Another thing about is with this open H file is that castling would lead to immediate mate. Okay. Because there's already a battery in place. So white has a lot of developmental problems. As black, since you're so ahead in development, you want to open lines. So you want to take here. And then if he takes, you can, with the pawn, well, this is great for you because it's about impossible to avoid material losses. Takes. That's horrible. And if he tries to block it, it still doesn't work out very well. One thing you could do here is takes, and then use the pin on the f2 pawn with rook takes. And a funny tactical point here is that if white tries to get the exchange with g3, well, okay, you can win in 2 moves. Maybe if you'd like, you can pause the video for a moment to try to see if you can find yourself. But there's a funny, nice response for black. Oh, always ask when there's a leaking move. If there's a way you can exploit it, and there's a nice place for the knight. And the king has the move. And then you have me. Checkmate. Okay. So that's a disaster. And one thing, since I messed up the position of the king, I'm gonna go back just to clarify. This is one thing about doing it with the board is sometimes you make mistakes, but I like this format because when you're playing over the board chess, you're not playing on a 2D board, and it's nice to get the feel of that. And I like the feel of the pieces. So here, takes. So we're looking at this retreat, and then we push the knight back to g1, and then we have this strong move. It's a good pawn sacrifice, h5. Knight takes, tempo. We got rook to e8. So this is actually one thing in favor of cash with the king. It clears the way for the rook to come in. So in some ways, white actually helped our development by helping us to castle by hand in this sense. Okay, because our king is in not that great of danger. And so it's really nice how this turns around on him. If he tries, to block the position and develop, we just take. And then if he takes with the queen, which is a better response, okay, we get another tempo. Okay, make b4. And then he can come back. The reason for d2 is maybe to get some counters with queen f4, maybe perhaps for treated queens, but we have a good solution to this. We can just take. The problem is white just doesn't have any time because there's a threat and a threat and a threat, and it's hard to defend. I mean, queen e4 is really strong here, and black, in fact, now wins the pawn back with interest because there's a fork on both pieces, and you have pressure on the e file as well. So this is winning. You can play king d1 to guard it, and you can just take this pawn, and you can get a check in, but it's nothing to worry about. You can just go back, and you're completely safe. If he goes here, here, and this is great. Okay. So everything holds, and white's king is in more danger actually, along with the material advantages. Okay. So now let's look at what happens if Black doesn't take the pawn. Okay. Yeah, taking the pawn is, in principle, not advisable in a situation like that, like when you're having developmental difficulties to begin with. So, okay, so the king's on F7. And so the knight retreated to G3. We push him back. H5. Okay. So let's look at some moves here. Okay. One is, I think, an actual attempt. Okay, for white. Okay, so let's say tries to play D3 to open the center, or D4. Maybe, well, actually, this is more to help develop or break open the center. The problem is with the development of difficulties, it's dangerous. But so let's look at D4 first, where white's trying to keep things closed. And if you want to be safe as black, you can just push him and continue developing. You have a nice space advantage. And this is great for black. If you want to open things a bit, this is like the more ambitious approach that Boden recommends. Again, we get a good attack like we did in the previous example. You have like knight b4, and queen e7, and this is a bit awkward. Let's see. Yeah. Things are coming so fast. Like if the knight blocks, if this knight blocks, I think this is probably pretty strong. And if he moves the king, which might be his best move, just to get out of the difficulties of this file, it's a common theme. The king has to move in this variation. Let's see. Again, you can push h4. That's a good move here, and you get a strong position. Okay, the knight can go back here, and the king. It's often sometimes useful just to retreat here to get out of the way, and it avoids a lot of like intermediate checks that white could have to ease his defense. So let's say if he tries to chase him back, one thing, taking this pawn is, I think, rather dangerous because it opens the d file against him. Rook d8 is coming next. I don't think that worked out too well for him. Let's see. Just to give a sample, you can try to bring the knight, but you can just gain more space. And it's black here. You can cover your squares with queen f7. But another tempting option is to get out of the fort. Another option you can do is knight e5, in fact, because again, taking this pawn runs into difficulties in the d file. Check comes, and then rook d8 winning the queen, so that's really good. And black has a pleasant position here. One thing you can do here, you can control the d5 square, okay, and Okay, so he guards here to try to consolidate his position. You can bring the other rook up, okay, and you're getting good squares for pieces. So this is an advantage that this is a comfortable position, and this pawn it can just poison, okay, like rook and slide here too. So black is pretty well centralized, and the bishop pair in this open position will be very good. Okay, so that's a sample variation of these positions look a little unusual, but hopefully this gives you some ideas of how to develop. This does look a little loose, but as you can see, this can actually help get the rook in the game quite effectively. It claims important space, taking ground from white's pieces, and that's, of course, quite useful. Okay, so last thing, okay, I want to mention to show the potential. Kings on F7. Right. So after we push, if the knight goes back here, we push to G1. We have this nice move. If he goes D3, we can take, which would transpose the other variation we just looked at. And that's probably White's best option, I think. But here, Black has the additional option of bishop G4, which is very tempting. And I think White's position becomes very difficult after this. If he tries to continue with his development with F3, we can just take here, and we have the E file opening against. And there's not really a good place for the king. We could stop castling bishop C5 for 1, and White needs to take some time out, maybe to play C3, because if he just tries, like White may try to perhaps castle queenside. If he tries to develop his queenside right away, maybe hoping to bring his queen up, this runs into problems because this check is so annoying. He just about has to move his king, because if the king goes here, then I think just taking here looks winning. Yeah, and the other thing, so if you can't do that, then as king d2 or f1, that's kind of miserable too, because I mean their ideas with knight takes pawn takes bishop h3, mating, if allowed. That's pretty bad too. So that leaves king d2, and then right here queen f6 is just very strong. You have a double tap. We get bishop here in b2. So if he moves here to attack the queen, the queen takes, and this is just a ruined position. White is just about to be mated. He has to play only moves to survive. Okay, and I mean, if he poses the question of this bishop, we can just I mean, one thing, like, just to see how winning this was, like, if he plays like a4 to keep this bishop out or something, we can take here. And this is well strong. You have here and here, it's about game over. Okay, so that's his position is being torn to shreds. Let's see, another thing. Okay. And if that doesn't work, okay. Let's go back just position before bishop f4. Okay. Right here, okay. After c3, we have monkey h check, king here. A nice move that's useful to keep the advantage. Well, to increase the advantage, say, it is to play king g8, and this is a useful prophylactic move. So once your pieces have reached a certain level of activity, and this is a very useful way of improving the position, and this just cuts out a lot of intermediate checks. One of the points here is that, okay, black is ready to play h4 now, to push white back. And if white tries to play something like h3 here, to break the pin, that's the move you'd have to consider on h3 in the previous move. This doesn't come with check now, and this gives you a great position. What's rather nice here is, okay, at first this may look, you might be a little annoyed that your king side, now that this bishop is gone, that you're losing ground, but you have an active defense here that's quite nice. You can come in with the knight, and this pawn is, you can take this pawn, but the activity of your pieces gives you a winning position. There's a really nice move here that just kind of seals the win here. In fact, this might be a good final problem for this video. Think about how you would continue here. And you're a pawn down at the moment, but okay, you have this huge initiative, and White has a loose piece. His king's in a really awkward position. Surely, this is great compensation. Think of how you could handle the position here to win. So try to find a winning move for Black. So now I'll give you one good answer. This is the first thing. It's a bit of a surprising one when I saw it. G6. This is kind of a cool defense. But it turns out there's not really a good place to put the queen. And because if the queen goes back all the way, for instance, we have queen g5 with the fork, and we're going to pick up the knight. So this is loose. And okay, so there's queen h6. Well, what's wrong with that? And this is one of the cool points behind this move. You have bishop e3 with the fork. Okay, and either way he takes, he's going to lose the queen. If the king takes, you've got a second fork. That's a discovery. So you can't take here because he's in check, and you pick up the queen. And the second one, okay, is if the second capture is if he takes with the queen. Well, then you've got the check here, and the fork, and if he takes here, then you take with the rook. And again, you have a completely winning position. And you can check here. And I don't think you can hold on to this knight because we have another check. And he's able to save his knight. And so you're going to have an attack with the queen for the bishop and the knight. And despite the pawn cap, what really matters is the initiative here. And white is not coordinated. And mate threats are coming quickly. So this is a completely winning position. For instance, this is hard because this rook is shut out of the game, and it's really, really hard to find. Both rooks are actually shut out of the game because how does he develop? That's a big question. There are problems to check here. I suppose there's this, but I think there's there are many good ways to continue to attack her. For instance, this looks very tempting. Okay, to tie the rook down, and essentially black is playing down the rook. And we could take this pawn, or play rook e2. I mean, mate. So this looks pretty bad. Okay. Maybe there's something stronger. But I think that's enough to see that this is a dominating position. Okay. So that's it for my coverage of the deviations. I think I'll come back to the Boden-Kieseritzky layer to show the more ambitious try. But I think I showed enough ideas that you can handle that safely. And don't feel bad about playing a move that's not necessarily the most 100% precise, because humans have faulty memory, and sometimes it's good just to know a simple solution. You don't always know what your opponent's going to play. And you may not face that a lot. In fact, I wouldn't really expect it. So it's good to have a good option. So this can occur by the two knights. It's very common at scholastic level if you play the two knights as black, as well as encountering the four knights. And so next time we're going to look at the most challenging move with knight takes e4 and how to handle the position after d5. Thanks for watching.